Welcome back to the channel, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you have a wonderful weekend ahead of you. Today, in solving your problems, I shall have for you the staple piece of the video, benching dilemmas, as well as whether you should be buying two particular forwards, both of whom were not covered in this type of style in everything you need to know. We will be looking at the press conference update. I will be showcasing my selling Salah plan for 29 and 30, and the big one, and as you can guess by the title and the thumbnail, I will be discussing why I have shifted my captaincy from Mohamed Salah to Cole Palmer. So stay tuned for that. If you enjoy the video, make sure to drop a like on it. And if 60 of you who watch regularly or you're a new viewer around here could subscribe, then we will hit 7,000 subscribers. That would be absolutely magnificent. But without anything else needing to be said, let's hop into the video. We shall start, however, with press conference updates. And of everything we learned, I would say this particular piece of information is certainly in the top two most important things. And that is that Alexander Isak has appeared to train every single day since the game against Brighton when they've had sessions. Now, I say appear because with Eddie Howe, you can never really trust him. Very much the case that whatever he says, the opposite turns out in terms of his player availability. But I feel like this is a little bit harder to lie about. And considering the media duties and the pictures that have been taken of Alexander Isak, I think you can somewhat safely expect that he lines up in the starting 11 against West Ham on Monday. So that's a big positive for a lot of us who have him. One less headache there. Mateta should be back for Game Week 30. So in terms of planning transfers for Game Week 30, should you wish to be aggressive there, alternatively a wildcard in Game Week 30 as opposed to 31, well, you should have him on offer for Southampton away. Glasner did say it wasn't like a very serious injury. It was more so just a big cut to the head in the wound, as opposed to something which affected the bone or the brain, or the skull, or a concussion. It was nothing of that sort. So he should be back for Game Week 30. And in fact, he should be back before that for the cup game against Fulham, which will give him minutes in his legs before the Southampton game. Matoma's fit for the weekend, and I thought this was important because a fair few of us own Castagna or Robinson, and as such, I would say that decreases Fulham's chances of a clean sheet, so just something to note there. Moving on to Agbadu with a similar line of thinking, I would say that given he's probably Wolves' best centre-back at the moment, and he occupies a central centre-back role, having him back, having his aggressive nature back, I think is good for Aït-Nouri's chance of keeping a clean sheet, but also maybe bolstering his chances of getting an attacking return as well, simply because when you are more stable, I think that's particularly in a wing-back role, just gives you a little bit more freedom to go up the pitch and hurt the other team. We will touch, well, I actually did touch on Aït-Nouri in quite some depth in everything you need to know, so you can reference that for why I quite like him this week and why I think potentially, just potentially, Cunha's absence could be good for his attacking output. Kamara had minutes in the UCL and he's fit enough to be in the squad for the game against Brentford. I would say that worsens Wilson and Mbeumo's chances of delivering a haul ever so slightly, just because I think they're a better team with Kamara in it. Albeit it is open to interpretation because John McGinn's had some good performances in the pivot. When you're coming back from injury and you haven't had a start, especially against the Brentford side, who will give you an intense battle and it will be of a quick nature, I do think that it might take a little bit of time to adjust, and who knows, maybe that hurts Villa in the short term at least. Paquetá, and this is probably the least important one here, but he's back in contention. I would say West Ham are probably better with him as well. So just a reference for how the Newcastle game could go. A small mention again on Chelsea's starting 11 in the Euro in the Conference League. And because Pedro Neto didn't get any minutes, I would say that's a good sign that considering his good performance against Villa, his haul against Southampton, and the rest against in midweek, he should start a false nine again against Leicester. So that's just something to mention. And then the other thing, and I would say this is also in the top two alongside Isak, is Slot did not so subtly hint at rotation, which could be pending. And as such, we will now move to captaincy. Firstly and foremost, as it says in the first sentence, this is very much driven by my gut feeling. Now, my gut feeling is something that I utilize in my decision-making process each and every game week. However, it is usually coupled with the footballing analysis to go alongside. This week, however, and probably for the first time, that's far less present. And it really is just a feeling, and I'm going here as such. You would have seen my discussion in everything you need to know. You would have seen my discussion in the team selection, and you would have seen that I was fairly certain I was going to captain Mohamed Salah. I even referenced it yesterday as 90+%. But that's just changed today. I've just got too strong of a feeling to ignore, and thus I'm going for it. Now, that may be a justification which for yourselves, or you individually, you don't think is good enough, and that's fair enough. But for my own team, I think it's perfectly fine. I'm happy to give it this much responsibility, I guess you could say, in my decision-making process, and I'm okay with that, right? I'm okay with sometimes just going completely off feeling. And it's not like I'm captaining Romelu Lukaku, who's not even in the league, and then vice captaining like Cristiano Ronaldo, right? It is Palmer at home to Leicester, so it's not like I've gone completely crazy. But yeah, it's very much feeling driven. Moving on to the intellectual football side of things, which are certainly present to an extent, and only to a small extent. The big thing for me, which even got me thinking again about the Cole Palmer captaincy in more depth, was Slot's not so subtle hint at rotation, right? And this for me worsened Salah's prospect. The big thing for me that came to me maybe 10 minutes after I heard it was the thought that Szoboszlai could potentially be benched. And when I thought about that, all of a sudden, like I said, it really reduced his prospects for me in a relative sense, right? Because I think Szoboszlai has been absolutely brilliant, but not only has he been brilliant, he's been brilliant for Salah. I think what he does is he's a wonderful facilitator for Salah's positioning because he works so hard both ways, including in the press, but also going backwards as well, which allows Salah to be a little bit higher than he usually would be should he not have a right-sided 8/10, which has the engine and the running capacity and the work rate of Dominic Szoboszlai. I think on the ball as well, they've got a wonderful relationship where Szoboszlai is extremely selfless and he'll constantly look to find Salah, but he's not. And look, I have so much respect for David Silva. I think he was a brilliant player, but sometimes I think, and many people would agree with this, sometimes he may have overplayed it at times and he should have shot in certain situations and he would have opted for the pass. There's one particular clip which I can recall in my mind that I referenced. But Szoboszlai is not really of that type of thing. His decision-making in that sense is very good. He just realizes and recognizes the quality of Mohamed Salah and often finds him in brilliant positions. I can see Jones starting in that place, and I think for me, that's a big thing. Also with Southampton's press and the way they like to play, I think having Szoboszlai is of even more importance just in comparison to system-on-system matchups. So yeah, look, maybe he starts, right? He's got an unbelievable engine. He seems to always be available, so maybe just starts him. But if he is to be benched, I can see that hurting him. And that was the main thing from an intellectual standpoint. Maybe he benches Ryan Gravenberch and plays Endo in the middle. Maybe even plays Gravenberch like in defense at right back if he wants to bench Trent, which we'll come to in a second. But either way, if for whatever reason Gravenberch is benched, and again, he's been someone who's been so available and Slot's played him so often, so it's not like I'm banking on this, it's just a theory. I think losing that press resistance against this type of press isn't great, and it won't be great for Salah or Liverpool. And I think Núñez up top is an interesting conundrum. I do think that he has the capacity at least to really take a lot of the output away from Salah, and maybe Salah turns to a bit more of a creative force now that he's got such a powerful runner, such a big transitional threat at 9, as opposed to someone like Diaz, who has struggled, I feel like, in this role to an extent as of late, but predominantly against deeper blocks, which is not really what Southampton pose you, but nonetheless, I think Núñez is a completely different kettle of fish. Going back to the point, though, that it isn't so much footballing based, and those are just some reasons, and they're loose reasons. Szoboszlai's got some depth to it. The others are, I would say, hopes. I guess I hope as a non-Salah captain that Núñez starts up top and Gravenberch's benched. But yeah, going back to it, naturally, it's the best team in the league at home, and the player in concern is the best player in the league at the peak of his powers against, with all due respect, the worst team in the league, right? And that's why I say it's not so much football driven. But for me, with this feeling, and with just a little bit of the football intellectual side with the rotation, I'm okay with captaining Cole Palmer. And speaking about Cole Palmer, look, he's not in form, and neither are we, I would say. I think, yeah, we won 4-0 against Southampton, but I don't think it was great, to be honest. I thought it was more so them being poor as to us being good. I think we've had issues against deeper blocks for a few months now, and they haven't really gone away. Look, do Leicester go and utilise a deeper block? Well, they didn't against Brentford when I expected them to, so maybe they don't do so again. But if they do, I guess that could be a potential problem as well, and I would say that they are better than Southampton. The one thing with Palmer is, and the reason I put force in quotation marks, is you saw against Southampton this arguably even too strong of a desire to get on the score sheet, so the shot volume increase, maybe becomes a bit more selfish. And when you're going to captain someone like that, I feel like it's probably a good thing. I don't like the fact that the momentum is really against him at the moment, but like I said, I've just got a feeling, and I'm going to go for it. Again, this isn't even strategic. It's not the fact that everyone's just going to captain Salah, and I feel like going the other way because I was on Salah for the last 2 days. When you've got that going for you, I have to go for it personally when it's this strong, and we'll see where we land. Last time I did this, it was more football based, and the swing was like 14 points after Palmer had his shot cleared off the line by Madueke. Hopefully, I'll get the reverse of that outcome this time around. But yeah, moving on to the staple piece of the video: benching dilemmas. And as per usual, these are all the players that I think could be in consideration for a benching in most squads at least. And as such, I'll just kind of look over a few particular dilemmas and you can kind of basically take that and then apply it to your own situation, should you wish. So in the forwards, we've got Wood and João Pedro that are in contention. In the midfield, we've got Foden, Bruno, Kluivert, Semenyo, Rodgers, Dango, and Ethan Nwaneri. Obviously, all three Bournemouth mids present, which I don't think they should be, but we'll come on to that. And then in defence, we've got the Bournemouth defenders, we've got the Forest defenders, and we've got Robinson and Mykolenko. Now, for me, I wouldn't be very comfortable benching Semenyo or Kluivert against the Spurs side, who haven't performed traditionally well when they've had a Thursday-Sunday split in terms of games. It was away as well. They lost as well. They've got a few injury issues. I would argue that one of their, I would not argue, but one of their better players this season in Dejan Kulusevski won't be there. I don't think that serves as a great thing for them. So for me, Semenyo and Kluivert, when their minutes are far more secure than Dango's, I would be starting them, and I would be starting them both over Rodgers. I think my issue with Rodgers here is that he probably just plays on the right-hand side, given Asensio didn't start midweek, and he's been in such good form in the 10. So yeah, Rodgers right-hand side, and as I've discussed many a time, due to particular, predominantly just angle bias, he's far more proficient at completing left-hand side actions, in my opinion, whether that be the carries or the final attacking actions compared to what he does on the right-hand side. I don't trust his output as much, and for me, personally, that I would be benching him, albeit it's close, and it's close enough where I'd certainly play him over Dango Atara, who's expecting minutes at the moment I don't trust. FPL Schofield, a renowned Bournemouth fan, and an even more renowned cricketer, Brad Curry, in real life, a Scotland cricketer, put a post with the predicted Bournemouth lineup, and he had Dango on the bench, so doesn't serve as a great practice for him starting. And then talking about the forwards, I would be benching João Pedro in a fair few cases where Dango isn't owned. I wouldn't really feel the need to risk his expected minutes when, for example, Semenyo, Kluivert, Rodgers, all the guys you'll be considering benching him for, he'll have much better than the minutes than him, right? Even including Rodgers. And I think with Rodgers, you could argue he's got a better fixture. Brentford away versus Fulham at home. I would say that's probably better from an attacking standpoint. And for me, I would say Wood starts in most cases unless you have a very, very, very strong squad, right? But let's just say, for example, your 7th and 8th attackers are Semenyo and Kluivert, and you really fancy Bournemouth away at Spurs, then I think, yeah, okay, you can bench Chris Wood on the assumption rather two forwards are like Isak and Watkins. I think that's fair, right? But if you have a Dango, if you have a Dango, I would definitely start Wood. Rodgers, I feel like, is far more subjective. So I would start Wood in that case as well. Yeah, I'm going to stick to what I initially thought when I was making these slides, and in that very brief split when I thought it over, I would also go Chris Wood. So I think that sums that up. I would be starting Foden. I've come to peace with the fact that I think he's going to start, and if he doesn't, then so be it. Hopefully, we get a leak given it's the early kickoff. One guy we haven't spoken about there at all is Bruno Fernandes, and we should probably speak about Ethan Nwaneri as well, considering he's in the same game. I wouldn't feel particularly comfortable benching Bruno, even if he's to play in the pivot. I just feel like he's so good in the bonus point system. Still got enough routes to points, even though those in open play are limited compared to the before. And I wouldn't mind starting him over, for example, a Rodgers or a Dango, or even an Ethan Nwaneri, given I think United go to the Emirates, go 5-4-1, go deep, and give Arsenal some problems, because they've certainly had them against those deeper blocks. So yeah, I'll start Bruno over Rodgers, Dango, and Ethan Nwaneri. Kluivert and Semenyo less so. I think in particular Semenyo's due a haul. From what I've seen, even the matchups that are coming up, I think Semenyo's due a haul. And then the defensive assets, well, it's not a great week for them, right? Usually we're looking at, or not usually, but sometimes we're looking at whether you should start someone for Ipswich at home or Southampton at home, given the strength of the defense. But this time is very much the opposite case. I would be benching Nottingham Forest defenders in all spots. I think it's perfectly okay to play Bournemouth defenders, given Kulusevski's out, and given, I guess, they didn't look so sharp on Thursday. But with Zabani out and him being suspended, I think that certainly lessens their chance of a clean sheet. But Højlund and Kirkes in particular have decent ceilings, hence why I'm more comfortable. I guess you have to say you would start Mykolenko in most cases, because Wolves without Cunha shouldn't be too promising an attack. But I have got a gut feeling that Wolves do okay in that game. And then Robinson, I would try and bench, but it's not the end of the world if you have to start him. So that sums those up. Now, the two forwards I mentioned earlier in the introduction are Evanlison and Haaland, and whether or not you should be buying them. When I look at Evanlison's fixtures, I think Spurs away, Brentford at home, Ipswich at home, over the next three is the best fixture set of any forward, right? So that's brilliant. But on the other hand, the things that I don't think are going for him is one, his minutes and his ceiling in combination with that. I think you'll see, especially considering he's coming back from injury, considering what Dango offers you up top, not just on the ball, but also off the ball. I think you'll see his minutes reside around 70, 75, and we saw a lot of that earlier in the season before he got injured, right? So the minutes isn't great for his ceiling, but I also don't feel like he's the super ruthless type. I don't think he's this brilliant finisher. I don't think he's this absolute weapon in transitions where he's going to get on the end of absolutely everything. I also think that, like, in terms of the sixth sense, while it's good, it's not great. And I would say in all those aspects, he's good, he's just not great. I'd also say that he's, and I say it there, a little bit more of the connector type. I think he's good at dropping in and linking, whereas being more of a box threat, like someone like Chris Wood, I wouldn't say is so much his thing. And obviously the opportunity cost as well. Should you value someone like Yohan Wissa or Omar Marmoush, should you value any of those guys higher than him? So for me, it's very much in the balance, but I wouldn't purely due to the minutes, because let's say Dango does start this game week, well, you've lost already 33% of the starts that you could have. And then with someone who doesn't have a particularly high ceiling, it could be very difficult to claw that back on your opponents. For example, like Marmoush scored a hat-trick. Wissa definitely has a higher ceiling given how much he generates just for himself and the team generates for him. And Chris was obviously in such good form with Ipswich away next week. He's got a decent ceiling as well. Wow, is that highlights? My apologies. So yeah, personally I wouldn't, but like I can just about understand it, and I think it's an interesting prospect to assess. Should you be buying Erling Haaland? Well, if you're going to do it in Game Week 29, I don't see huge issues with doing it in 28, unless the player you're having to sacrifice this week to bring him in is someone who is certainly preferable to own this week. So, for example, let's say you think Trent starts and you have to sell Trent to facilitate Haaland. Well, Trent's got Southampton at home and Haaland's got Forest away. Is your team in that bad of a shape where you desperately need Haaland away and you'll have some defensive cover at the same time? Probably not. Or is your attack in that bad of a shape, I should say? Probably not. But for many of us, the route will be Salah or Palmer. And can you really sell either before Southampton at home, Leicester at home, when both are captaincy candidates? I don't think so. Not for Forest away, and especially not when he's a forward. So for me, I would wait unless you are in a super unique situation where, one, you're not so bullish on Trent, two, you're not so bullish on Salah, and maybe you think he'll get benched. I don't, but maybe you think he'll get benched, and then you go and get Haaland, or you even want to captain Haaland this week. In most cases, probably not, but there would be some where I think it's far more justifiable. Talking about selling Salah, there was some interest about the move in Game Week 29, so I thought I would showcase what my team looks like in that week and the week after when I'm doing so. So, firstly, those are the two moves I would be making. I would be selling Ollie Watkins and I would be selling Mohamed Salah to facilitate Erling Haaland, and then whatever mid I choose aside from Bruno Fernandes and Brian Mbeumo, because I would not be able to afford them. So in this case, I've gone for a Semenyo because, like I said, I think he's due. And this would basically turn it into this type of problem. It would mean that I either get Palmer versus Arsenal away and Tottenham at home, because I'd have him next week, or I would have Salah versus Everton at home in 30, but no fixture in 29, hence why it's just 2 fixtures versus 1. For me, this is easy, Cole Palmer. I think the Tottenham at home fixture is the best out of these 3. I'm not super bullish on Salah's prospects for Everton at home. I think it's a good fixture, but I don't think it's great. And Palmer has an extra fixture. And I'm not going to captain Mohamed Salah in Game Week 30. So why would I do that? Now, obviously, everyone's in a different situation. Maybe you view it very differently. Maybe you can have all 3. And fair enough if you do, right? That's just my opinion. Talking about the team in 29, I mean, like, it's okay. It's not great, but it's difficult for it to be great when you've had to play the assistant manager, utilize transfers there, and then so soon after, you have to plan for a blank game week as well. And we have 3 double ups in attack, which again isn't so ideal, but I think considering what it gives us next week and considering this is a blank, it's okay, as I will show. And just to finish on blank game week 29, it really is a case of it is okay and it's nothing better than that. But in 30, it looks a lot better, right? Like you've got a double Chelsea at home to Spurs, especially if Pedro Neto to continue playing false 9. Great. You've got double Manchester City at home to Leicester. Great. You've got double Bournemouth at home to Ipswich. Great. And I've started Wissa away to Newcastle, but if I have any issues there's Isak off the bench. And if Isak's fit, I'll probably start him and try to figure out which one to bench, right? And even the defense is fairly solid as well. And then we get to wildcard 31. So I think with the team looking strong in 30, there's no real reason for me to hold on to Salah, especially when I get the extra fixture in Game Week 29. And who knows, Palmer Hall's against Arsenal, and I'll basically have wiped any potential gain out that Salah could get, and I'll be almost free rolling in Game Week 30. So yeah, do I think he'll haul against Arsenal? No, but even one goal is like minimum 9 points for him, and it'd be really difficult, I think, for Salah to make that up, especially when Palmer's got another game to go. So that's why I feel so comfortable with it. And then I can just get him back on 31 should I wish. That is something we can deal with then. Now, I guess the counter argument to this, aside from like the fixtures play and my view on the fact that I'll get more points out of Palmer and holding him, is that I'll lose a lot of value in Salah, right? I'll probably lose about 0.5. I think though, that like I'm more comfortable losing that 0.5, knowing that, or not knowing, but expecting to get more points. And not only that, I might not even buy him back in 31 as well, right? Especially if his free hit 34. I could just go the rest of the season without him. And I'm not super against that, given the quality of captaincy options elsewhere and the double seller to come, which he is without. So that's about it. And last thing, this idea I initially got from Praz from the FPL Wire. So make sure to drop him a like on his videos. Make sure to subscribe there. And yeah, go and say thank you to Praz if it works. And that is all she wrote for this video, ladies and gentlemen. And that is all she wrote for Game Week 28's content. I shall see you very soon on Sunday for transfer plans, where we look ahead to blank Game Week 29, and we shall review what I think will be a very interesting game weeks. As I imagine, there will be a little bit of swing in the Salah Palmer captaincy. If it was 90-10, maybe 24 hours ago, I think by the time we get to the deadline, it'll be about 85-15, 80-20, 75-25, which will make for an interesting little battle at least. And yeah, that's the team, and I'm certainly looking forward to the game week. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Drop your questions in the comments below. I'll be getting to them and them on previous videos in the time between now and the deadline. And like I said, I wish you a wonderful weekend. Good luck and goodbye.